Jim Leyland was a Hall of Fame chain smoker. Now he's a Hall of Fame manager.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all the Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and I've done 5 seasons, ready for my 6th here at the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And for those of you who listen to the show every day, please be sure, if you make a comment, to put on the hashtag EverydaySully so I can see who's been listening or watching here on the YouTubes every single day. Thanks so much for making this your first listen. And by the way, thanks for all the nice notices and everything. I'm feeling a lot better. I'm COVID negative, so boost yourself up. I got the boost. Took my medication, and guess what? I caught COVID, and I'm fine 4 days later. It works, folks. It works. Do it. And it's not, be careful out there. A lot of people are traveling around, so keep an eye out for things. Hey, we've got an interesting show today. Jeff Snider of Locked on Dodgers is going to show up, and we're going to talk about this era of Dodger baseball. They're going on for another year where they're going to try to win another 100 games and try to, get a little further than they did the last few years. As someone who lives in the Los Angeles County, I really would like to see the Dodgers do well because, it makes it more fun for me, especially when I go to work and I can talk to people about baseball. But Jeff's have some thoughts, and wonder if Ohtani's going to land somewhere. Let's go over our trivia question for the day, however, which was, I did the other day, which was, what is the only franchise to have never had a player hit 200 home runs while in their uniform? The only team to have never had one player amass 200 home runs for their franchise. And we got a couple of guesses for the Rays. Nope. They've reached that peak. The answer is a team that's been around longer than I've been alive, and I'm 51. The answer, and a couple of you got it right. Court Stell got it right. John Murphy Jr. got it right. The answer is the San Diego Padres. Nate Colbert is their career home run leader, as John Murphy Jr. told us, with 163 homers. There is a very strong possibility that Manny Machado this season will become the all-time San Diego Padres home run champion. If Tony Gwynn just hit like 3 home runs more a year each year of his career, he would be the all-time home run champion for the Padres, which is strange because you don't think of him as a home run hitter, but he has almost every other record. Why not be the home run champion? Hey, Tony Gwynn is in the Hall of Fame. We're going to have a big Hall of Fame ballot this year. I've been watching the Balco documentary on Netflix, and I'm really let people in. Come on, let people in. And that'll be my thoughts on who should be in the Hall of Fame. That's going to be big topics for upcoming podcasts. But we had a vote for the Hall of Fame that came through here on Sunday night. And, I really wish they did a better job of, making a show. But what are you going to do? The 16-person contemporary baseball era committee had a ballot that featured, some people I thought were going to have a much better shot than they did. Lou Piniella was on the ballot. Lou Piniella, the manager of the World Series champion Reds in 1990, took the Mariners to their first championship, their first trip to the postseason, took the Cubs to the postseason, had a wonderful career. He didn't get in. Bill White, who did everything you'd ever want in baseball, he didn't get in. Davey Johnson, Cito Gaston. I'm really stunned that Hank Peters, the executive behind many of the great Baltimore Orioles teams, that had a big part in constructing the Charlie Finley A's and basically helped keep the minor leagues afloat when he was the president of the minor leagues in the 1970s. He didn't get in. Joe West didn't get in, much to, I'm sure, the delight of Hawk Harrelson. Someone did get in, and to me, absolute no-brainer. Jim Leyland, of course, he's a Hall of Famer. Wonderful. He managed for 22 years in the big leagues, had some ups, had some downs, but he had a knack for turning around franchises. He took over the Pirates when the Pirates, it's really difficult to really articulate where the Pirates were when Jim Leyland took over. They were one of the glory glamour teams of the 1970s, going to the playoffs, I think 6 years in the 1970s, winning a pair of championships. But after the We Are Family Championship in 1979, the Pirates completely fell apart, and many of the players were embroiled in a horrible cocaine scandal, and the team was about to move to Denver. Pittsburgh was going to lose the Pirates. Jim Leyland took over the Pirates in the mid-1980s. There were cracks. You could see in 1987 things were going to be a lot different. And by 1988, they had a winning record, and they went to the postseason in 1990, 91, and 92. And in 91 and 92, they lost two of the most thrilling National League Championship Series, and for Pirate fans, absolutely heartbreaking. The 91 NLCS was an absolute barn burner, and everyone, of course, remembers the Francisco Cabrera game that the Pirates got to within 1 out of going to the World Series against a superior Braves team. Well, he turned that team around. Yes, he had Bonds, but he also had to, mix and match as the team lost players throughout the time he was there. And he found that Rubik's Cube to put it together until finally the team absolutely collapsed because of the finances. Eventually, he said, I don't want to rebuild anymore. He went to the Marlins who had never contended, and the Marlins pushed everything to the center of the table. Yes, they spent big money on his former star, Bonilla, and Sheffield, and Kevin Brown, and Moises Alou, and a lot of other big players, but he still had to beat a very good Giants team, had to make the wild card in a very competitive National League, and beat a superior Braves team with a little bit of help from Eric Gregg's strike zone, and then went on to face Cleveland in a wild, crazy Game 7 of the World Series, of which they won. And they immediately pulled the rug on him. And he managed one bad year managing the Rockies, was out of managing, and then came back and took over a Tigers team that was lost 119 games and turned them around and got them to the World Series. And during the Jim Leyland era between 2006 and 2013, the Tigers, who were a laughingstock, were one of the consistent contenders in the American League, going to the World Series twice. They didn't win in Detroit. They didn't win in Pittsburgh. It's one of the good reasons, one of the good things about the Marlins' victory in 1997. There were a bunch of veterans on that team who got their only rings, and Jim Leyland got his ring, got his championship. If suddenly the 97 Marlins are a feel-good story right now. I am a big Jim Leyland fan. I loved those Pirate teams. I happen to be a big Bonds fan. I've always been a Bonds fan. But those Pirate teams were so much fun. Their center fielder, Andy Van Slyke, was a guest on the podcast many years ago. And they were fun. They were exciting. They played a fast-paced brand of baseball that was electrifying. And Jim Leyland made sometimes unorthodox decisions, pulling this player, that player, putting this person out of position, pinch running them. But he was fun to watch as he was nervous out of his mind, chain smoking. He was exactly what you want a manager to look like. He looked like the manager from Major League. And now he's a Hall of Fame manager. And you know what? I think he should have been joined by a couple other people. I think I would have had Piniella. I definitely would have the late Hank Peters, and I would have had Bill White. But They didn't ask me. Jim Leyland was an absolute no-brainer, and now he's a Hall of Famer. And that's a good thing. We're going to see other people probably elected this year. I haven't taken a good long look at the ballot yet, and I'm a big Hall guy. I think I want to celebrate players. I like having lots of players on the stage. And we had that ridiculousness where we've not had some of the great players of all time entered because of the steroid stuff. I understand. I think some of the greats are eventually going to get in via some of these committees. I digress. Jim Leyland, Hall of Famer, deservedly so. So we're going to take a quick moment here, and we're going to come back with Jeff Snider. We're going to talk a little bit about the Dodgers. You know, the always reliable Dodgers. Talking a little bit about our friends from FanDuel. You know FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official sponsor of the National Football League. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel to YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, as promised, Jeff Snider is here from Locked On Dodgers. Hey, buddy. As you and I were yapping just before I hit record here, you know, I live amongst Dodger fans here in Pasadena, and most of I have a couple of huge Dodger fans in my class, and some of the other teachers I work with. I have to tell you, from where I'm sitting, I have never seen a fan base coming off of multiple triple-digit win seasons this mad ever that I've ever seen. Give me an idea of the temperature of Dodgerland, and you know what needs to change, or if anything needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable people are upset, even though, like, going into the season, the Dodgers weren't picked to win the division even. They ran away with the division. I think it's just the nature of the loss. I don't think anybody, even Dodger fans going into the postseason, no matter what Bill Plaschke pretended to believe in the newspaper, I don't think anybody actually thought that was a World Series winning team. And so if the Dodgers had lost in the NLCS or even put up a fight in the NLDS, I don't think people would be upset. It's just the getting swept by the team you just finished 16 games ahead of, losing to a division rival in the playoffs for the second straight year, a division rival who in the regular season, the Dodgers were much better than for the second straight year, and not really putting up a fight, scoring 6 runs in 3 games. It all combined to, it's understandable that people are frustrated. It's kind of funny that you live in Dodgerland. I don't. I live 661 miles from Dodger Stadium. But you know, I have a Dodgers podcast, so I do hear from a lot of Dodger fans about a lot of things. And so, you know, when you ask what needs to change, what needs to change is the Dodgers need to hit in the postseason. Yeah. And they have, you know, in 2022, it wasn't that they didn't hit, it was that they didn't hit with runners in scoring position. They had a lot of runners in scoring position. They hit pretty well in the series, just not at the right times. This year, they just didn't hit at all. And it's hard to win a series like that. And that's what needs to change.
Something just dawned on me that if the Giants had rallied in the bottom of the 9th in the 2021, in what was a wonderful 5-game series between San Francisco and LA in 2021, which the Dodgers held on. But if the Giants had rallied, this would be 3 consecutive years where they lost to a division rival. in the postseason.
Well, yeah, and if the Dodgers hadn't swept the Padres unmercifully the year before that, then it would be 4 straight years. If my mom had wheels, she might be a wagon, Sully.
Yeah, but but I think you're right. The fact is, like, they pounded the snot out of San Diego the year before. They pounded the snot out of Arizona this year. And, I have my special ed class that I teach, and I have a kid in my class who's a rabid Dodger fan. One of my kids on the spectrum is a rabid Dodger fan. And before game 1, I joked with him. I said, "You're going to start tonight, right? You're the starting pitcher." He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not the starting pitcher." He's like, "No, I think you're starting." And then I'm just going to call him D. I'm not going to say his full name, but I'm just going to call him D. And when I saw Kershaw pitch, I texted one of my teachers, say, like, they might as well have started D. He only got 1 fewer out than Kershaw. I mean, how could D have pitched worse? To me, the fact that it was over, the series was over in the top of the first. I mean, that was I mean, the whole idea was they had their pitching staff. You're banking a lot on Lance Lynn in a postseason pitching staff, but you think, well, okay, Kershaw will pitch well, so you roll the dice on the next 2 games. But the fact that strategy was taken away in 1/3 of an inning, I also just think added to the frustration.
It did. I don't necessarily I don't think the series was lost. Obviously game 1 was lost. The Dodgers weren't going to win game 1 after that first inning, but they allowed 4 runs in each of the next 2 games. The Dodgers averaged 5.5 runs a game during the regular season. If the regular Dodgers, they hit Merrill Kelly, they hit Zach Gallen during the regular season. If the regular Dodgers show up in those 2 games, they win those 2 games, they probably win the series. It's easy to look at the pitching, and yeah, Lance Lynn sucked, especially in that 1 inning. Bobby Miller really struggled. Clayton Kershaw was awful. But the fact is, the reason they lost is because they scored 2 runs in each of the games.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. That's a great point. We're gonna a quick little guest here, Ellie. There's my dog.
Good looking dog.
There you go. She recorded 1 fewer hit than the combination of Freeman and Betts, which I think actually in a way was worse than the Kershaw. I mean, you could recover after 1 bad game. We've seen that. But especially a game that was totally lost right from the we're done. Don't burn your bullpen. But the fact that Freeman and Betts were just wet the bed in the postseason as well, I think that killed them in games 2 and 3. I mean, if they had split 2 and 3, and they're down 2-1 going to game 4, I give them a puncher's chance to win the series.
Yeah.
But my dog was barking. But I think that their stars didn't. The main thing was their stars didn't work.
Yeah.
If their stars played up to the way that they, we know they can, they beat Arizona, and then who knows what happens against Philadelphia. I don't think they beat this Rangers team, although the Rangers was so weird this year that they were either looked like a 100-win team or a 500 team. So
yeah,
they're anyone's guess.
Yeah, and it's funny that Dodger fans, in their anger, it always goes back to Dave Robertson, Andrew Friedman, fire those bums. And it's like, the fact is, Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts they finished 2nd and 3rd in the MVP voting. They both had excellent seasons.
Yeah. They're amazing.
Excellent players. And so, I don't know what you expect Andrew Friedman or Dave Roberts to do about the fact that they both forgot how to hit for 3 games. And that's the thing that, it's the heartbreaking part of the MLB postseason, is that it's probably not the first time, even this year, that Freeman and Betts had 3 straight bad games at the same time. It's not going to happen often, but when it does happen in October, it's so easy to read way more into it than you should, when realistically, Mookie hasn't hit super well in the postseason for most of his career. He did play really well in 2020, but Freddie's hit really well in the postseason. And so there's nothing about these guys that says, oh, they can't hit in the postseason. I believe, with very few exceptions, most hitters are going to be roughly what they are in the regular season. They're going to be that in the postseason. You look at Derek Jeter's postseason numbers, Mr. Clutch Derek Jeter, his postseason numbers, very similar to his regular season numbers. You name anybody, David Ortiz, same thing, very, very similar. It's just they're great hitters who hit great in the postseason. And it's when the great hitters don't hit great in the postseason, that's when we remember it.
Well, and also, it's hard to get on Freeman, I think, when 5 of the last 7 seasons, including the last 4 full seasons, they've won 100 games or more. In fact, this year's 100-win total was the lowest 100-win total that they've had of their 100. They won 104 in 2017 when they lost the World Series under suspicious circumstances. They were a swing away from beating Washington in 2019 when they won 106 ball games. Obviously, they won 106 ball games the year after the COVID season. They won 111 games when the Goose showed up against San Diego. They won 100 games this year. So how are you getting on Freeman for that?
Yeah, and the theory, I think, is that I've actually seen people say Dodgers ownership doesn't care about winning a World Series. They just want to get as much money out of the fans. And so I think there's people who believe that the Dodgers are deliberately signing players who are good enough to win 110 games, but not good enough to win in the postseason. And those kind of players don't exist.
No, they don't.
That would be much harder and more expensive than with all the trial and error than building a great team. The fact is, there's only 3 teams that have won a World Series more recently than the Dodgers. 26 fan bases should be more angry than the Dodgers.
Right.
And it's weird to me that people, I get it. We love our team. We hate when they lose, but the Dodgers could come back next year with the same exact team they played with this year, and they'd be in the postseason again and probably do better in the postseason because Freddie and Mookie probably won't crap the bed at the same time in the 2024 postseason.
I really thought the Braves were going in this year. Last year, the 2022 season, I thought the Dodgers were going in. I thought that was a great team, and I thought we were going to see the rematch with Houston. But no, this year I thought it was. I admit I thought it was Atlanta, but I did think it was going to be Atlanta. Did I pick Atlanta? No, actually, no. I had Milwaukee. I picked it to be Atlanta, Milwaukee in the LCS when the playoffs started. So yeah, I guess
that worked out for you.
Well, I guess I'm a hypocrite because I didn't pick the Dodgers to win the division series here either. So maybe I get some egg on my face.
And that's the thing about a best of 5 series. Like the Brewers would have been really dangerous with their pitching. Before Brandon Woodruff got hurt, obviously.
Right.
But even without Woodruff, Burns and Peralta, that's a really hard team to beat in a short series. The D-backs did it. And to the D-backs credit and the Padres in 2022, both of those teams were better than what their regular season records showed. They both of those teams had flaws throughout the season, and they came into the postseason having figured out those flaws and playing at a much better baseball than the 88 ish wins. The D-backs this year was 84 wins. The Padres last year was 88 wins. That both of those teams were much better than those numbers would reflect. They still weren't as good as the Dodgers. Shouldn't have beat the Dodgers, but the gap wasn't as big as the regular season records maybe made it seem.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk not about the past, but a little bit about the future. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts on Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. That's Jeff Snider. I'm your pal Sully. We're doing a Locked On MLB, Locked On Dodgers crossover. Hey, going into the 2024 season, the winter meetings are going on right now. What's the Dodgers priority list right now?
Shohei Ohtani and starting pitching is the main thing. They need another outfielder probably. I do think the Dodgers strategy this offseason is going to be different. I think they're going to take a different approach, not necessarily directly because of, the postseason losses the last 2 seasons, but this year's free agency is a little bit different. This year's trade market is a little bit different. It is the kind of year you kind of go for it. I think, the hard part is, and I said this on Twitter on Sunday evening, that Shohei Ohtani already knows what team Shohei Ohtani is going to be on next year. He's he's playing out the process. He, obviously he wants to make as much money as possible. So no point ruling anybody out. Let them get in their bidding war. But he's already decided. He probably decided, somewhere between 3 and 30 months ago what team he's going to play for in 2024. And so if that's the Dodgers, that's awesome. But if it's not, there's no practical difference between $500 million and $700 million.
Well, I mean, from my personal experience, when I reached that $700 million stage, it gave me enough. It gave me enough
better
money to put
lounges
it
at
down.
the airport.
Well, I could put a down payment on a house in Pasadena with that amount of money. So that's
true.
Yeah.
And so I think in a weird way, for the bigger the free agent, the less the money matters, because, you do start looking at, well, I'm signing a 10-year deal or something like that. You start looking at, like, the example I use is Corey Seager. That's one of the things Dodger fans are upset about, that the Dodgers let Corey Seager go. I don't think Corey Seager wanted to play in LA anymore. I think Corey Seager didn't, I don't think LA matches his personality. And so when it came time for him to sign the contract that will decide where his future children are going to go to school, all those things, I think Texas was a better fit for his personality than LA was. And, even if you factor in, like, everybody's done the math that the Dodgers would have had to offer when the Rangers gave him $300 million or $325, Dodgers would have had to give him $400 million just to match the after-tax dollars because of the difference in tax rates. I think the Dodgers would have had to do $500 million to get Corey to say, well, okay, I guess I'll stay in LA instead of going somewhere where I'm more comfortable. And even then, I don't know if he would have done it, because, like I said, at that point, there's no practical difference between $400 million and $500 million. And so, the same thing with Ohtani. Nobody really knows exactly what Ohtani's looking for in his next team. We can guess. We know he probably wants to be on a winning team. Check for the Dodgers. Beyond that, it's like, probably wants to be in a big market because he's going to make so much money on sponsorship deals everywhere. LA, check. All these boxes you can come up with. Great weather, check. Everything you can come up with, the Dodgers check the box. But all we can do right now is guess what Shohei Ohtani wants. And so we're guessing what boxes they need to check.
I've been saying on this show that I do think there's credence to him signing a short-term, like 2-year, to show that he can pitch again, and then going on the market again as a pitcher, hitter, free agent. I do personally think the team that makes the most sense for him is the Dodgers. For me personally, but I also think the Cubs are sitting there as, Chicago is obviously a big market, and there are Cub fans everywhere. I don't think we know he's not going to go to the Yankees. The Yankees aren't even bidding. And I don't think the Mets are in a position to bid right now. I think the Mets have actually taken 2 steps back intelligently. I think they smartly, I think rebuilding is actually kind of a smart thing for the Mets to do. If they say, hey, let's build from within and create the first New York championship team in over a decade of any sport, with the exception of MLS, I think that's would be a smart move on their part. I think the Giants want to make a splash, but I think the Giants are going to land Yamamoto. I think that's where he's going to wind up going. And I know the Mariners want to make a splash, but you're right. I think that he wants to play in LA. I think that's why I think he chose the Angels, because he wanted to, they would let him pitch and hit. And I think he wanted to play in Southern California, but he also now is like, well, I want to play for this organization. It's insane.
Yeah.
The Dodgers make so much sense.
Yeah. And one box the Dodgers check, I think, that the Cubs can't, is time zone wise. I think the Dodgers make more sense for people watching back in Japan. If you look, it's basically a night game in LA is in the morning in Japan. And so, with Chicago, you're getting deeper in the day, or too early in the morning. If he's in Chicago, that it's, before people are awake. So, there's a lot of different reasons LA makes sense, but ultimately it's going to come down to what he wants.
Now, as a Dodger guy, give me your your 2 non-Ohtani wish list guys. Obviously, you want Ohtani. Okay, yeah. Everyone does.
The Dodgers need a starting pitcher, or that's the funny thing, and I could do a whole 30-minute episode on whether the Dodgers actually need a starting pitcher, but they
I think
quote
they
unquote,
do.
well, they've got 12 starting pitchers right now. It would be, the Dodgers aren't the kind of team that will go into a season with so many young starting pitchers. I think they could be successful, and it might be better for them in the long run if they did, to get these guys experience, but it would be dangerous for 2024 specifically. And so I don't think they're going to want to do that with Freeman and Betts under contract, all that stuff. So yeah, they need a starting pitcher or two. And so Yamamoto makes a lot of sense. And then a trade, I'd love to see, a Rosarena and Glasnow trade coming to the Dodgers. So, if they sign Yamamoto in free agency, bring over Glasnow and Rosarena in a trade, then even if they don't sign Ohtani, that addresses all their needs, really. Throwing Ohtani too at DH and boom, they're basically down to just signing roster fillers at that point and role players.
What young player do you think is going to make an impact on the Dodgers in 2024?
I think Bobby Miller is a future ace, and I think 2024, if he counts, I mean, he had a good rookie season.
He counts, yeah.
I think he's going to take a big step forward, and we saw a lot of growth in him at different times during 2023, and so I expect Miller by the end of 2024. I think he's going to be the kind of guy who people are picking as a sleeper Cy Young pick for 2025.
And what's up with Kershaw?
I don't know. I would guess. I mean, if I had to guess, I think he's probably done. I don't think he wants to be. I think, even though he's not really into personal accolades and stuff, he's 54 strikeouts or something away from 3,000 for his career. I think he wants to get to that mark. But I think, when he had the surgery, his statement said that he hopes to be back sometime in the summer. And I think if he can get back in the summer, I think he will come back. But I think if it turns into he's out for all of 2024,
he's probably done. Yeah,
he's probably done.
I'm a big Kershaw fan. I do love Kershaw. I'm glad he did get a ring where he contributed a lot.
Yeah,
winning 2 key games in that World Series. I wouldn't want his final game to be that.
And I was there. I watched him walk off the mound, and he's my favorite player of all time. Watching him walk off the mound after that performance, knowing that it could be the end, because we knew he was hurt. We didn't know it was shoulder surgery hurt, but we knew he was hurt.
Yeah.
It was not pleasant, and I really hope he comes back.
All right, Jeff Snider, tell people where they can listen to your show.
Locked On Dodgers. It's a podcast just like this one. You can get it wherever you get podcasts. You can get it on YouTube. I guess if Locked On MLB is your first listen, Locked On Dodgers could be your second listen, right?
Right. And follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. It's Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Let's do a trivia question.
All right.
The Dodgers have never had someone hit 400 home runs in their career. And it is Duke Snider and Gil Hodges are 1 and 2. Now, don't you answer this, Jeff Snider.
Okay.
What player has hit the most home runs in Los Angeles Dodger history? Who is the Los Angeles Dodger home run king? Gil Hodges hit most of his in Brooklyn. Snider, most of his in Brooklyn. What player hit the most home runs as an LA Dodger? Don't you answer, Jeff Snider. Put the answer down here in YouTube and everywhere else. Talking about Jim Leyland's Hall of Fame trip and how Clayton Kershaw tripped off the mound, and maybe how Shohei Ohtani could wind up being the all-time home run king in LA Dodger history. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Dodgers crossover. He's Jeff Snider. I'm Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.
You can call me Jeff.
Snydog, actually.